Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first episode of the Thompson Chiropractic Technique podcast. So, we're going to start a series of interviews with people who knew Dr. Thompson. My name is Beth Zog, and I will be your host, and I am Dr. Thompson's granddaughter. So, I can't wait for you to meet our very first guest coming up next. Tonight we have a very, very special guest, Dr. Dee Humber, probably one of the most beloved chiropractors in the profession today, and also a very dear friend of Dr. Thompson. And so I thought, what better person to bring on for our very first Thompson Technique interview than Dr. Humber, who had Dr. Thompson as an instructor at Palmer College, and then brought Dr. Thompson into all the DE meetings in Atlanta. And so welcome, Dr. Humber.
Hey there.
You look great.
Good to be on, Dr. Beth.
Yeah, so I mean, you have a family that was in chiropractic and a brother who was a chiropractor. So can you just start off by telling us about how you became interested in chiropractic?
Well, yes, Beth, my older brother, Dr. T.O. Humber, was in the service. His wife had an illness when she was a teenager, had gone to a chiropractor in Atlanta and gotten outstanding results. So when they married and were out in Texas, he was in the service, as I mentioned. She started having issues with lower back pain. She was expecting the first child. So she encouraged him to take her to a chiropractor. And when he finally consented, she went and got results, and he was surprised because he thought chiropractors were quacks, to be honest with you. But this Dr. Brookie Stevens in Lubbock, Texas, T.O. went in one day, and Virginia, his wife, introduced him, and he said, son, what are you going to do when you get out of the service? He said, well, I'm a pretty good salesman. I think I'll probably get in real estate or something like insurance maybe. And he said, no, you don't want to do that. He said, I don't. He said, no, you need to be a chiropractor. So he planted that seed, and Virginia got such good results and stayed under Dr. Stevens' care while they were there for a good long while. And so when he got out of the service, he came home and told my parents, he said, Virginia and I going to Davenport, Iowa. We're going to enroll at Palmer College. Wow. So he did. And after he was there for probably a year or so, my other brother, Dr. J.K., decided to go up and visit with him. And it happened to be in August at Lyceum time. And he got to hear BJ under the tent and just got in the environment there at Palmer. Next thing you know, he decided he's going to be a chiropractor. Wow. So he so that's two of them at Palmer. Back in those days, there was only 18-month program at Palmer. So after they finished there, they went out to Texas College. Dr. Drain was the president out there. They were out there for 18 months and came back, started practice in Atlanta.
Wow.
But while they were in Davenport, I'd been having issues with stomach problems, headaches. And so T.O. encouraged my mom to take me to chiropractor in Atlanta, Dr. Grady Lake, whose father had passed away. And Grady came in and took the practice. And so Grady was my first chiropractor. I went to him and got adjusted, and of course, got good results. And so then Dr. Humber, J.K., we call him, he started encouraging me when I got out of high school. Back then, you could just go straight from high school. So he encouraged me to go to Davenport, which I did, and went up and enrolled in the 1052 class at Davenport. And it was quite a time. We had about 1,000 students there at Palmer at the time. Of course, BJ was still alive, still president. But anyway, that was my beginning in my chiropractic career, we'll say.
So did your family come from the Atlanta area? Is that where you were raised, in
Yes,
Atlanta? Oh, I
yes.
didn't know that. And so when you got to Palmer School, then at what point did you have Dr. Thompson as one of your instructors?
Well, to be honest with you, Beth, I don't remember exactly which quarter that was, but I think I mentioned you earlier. Uh, we were in a class, one of the Quigleys. I'm not sure it was WH, but anyway, one of the Quigleys, and he couldn't be there. So your dad came in, your granddad came in filling in for him, and it was just great. He was your granddad was so upbeat and positive about everything, and we just loved having him come in because W.H. Quigley was kind of more subdued, and but at any rate, not knocking the Quigleys at all. But anyway, your granddad was kind of refreshing, and he came in and was with us there, I think, for maybe 2 weeks. But he said, "You guys and gals are fixing to graduate in just a few months," and he said, I want to see if see what you guys and gals think about what you're gonna do when you get out." And so he asked for volunteers to come up and role play their first patient. And so these two guys that were sitting on the front row to class, oh, they couldn't stand it. They had both volunteered. He said, "Okay, we'll take one of you, and then we'll have another one." Anyway, the first one came up. He said, "You sit here at the desk, and I'm gonna be your patient, and you just tell me what you're gonna do. You're just months away now, and you're gonna get out there, and you're gonna have a first patient come in, and you're gonna have to deal with it. And I want to know what you know." And so the guy says, "Oh, I can handle that." He was real positive. He got up there, he sat down in the chair behind the desk and this is gospel truth, put his feet up on the desk, ran back, and and your granddad says, "Okay, now what's next?" And he said, "Well, here, have a cigarette." Your granddad liked to faint. He said, "So you offered me a cigarette." He said, "Okay, you fail. Now the other guy, you come on."
Oh my goodness, that's funny.
Anyway, I never will forget that. That was like, I will say this: he had two of them come up, and both of them, we not know for a fact that they, both of them within a year, they were, after they started practice, were out of practice. Never made it.
Wow.
It was so far off base. But at any rate, it was you know, we had a lot of good uh, instructors there. In the faculty at Palmer at the time. Of course, like I said, BJ was there, and we got to hear him when he come back from Sarasota in the spring.
Mm.
We had the opportunity to go hear him. But yeah, your granddad, he was one of the bright lights amongst the faculty for us. I know that.
So what year did you go up there? It was in the late 50s?
Fall of 52. We're in the 1052 class.
Yeah.
And, then my brother, Dr. T.O., Sid Williams, been playing football for Tech, was injured, and lost a lot of his athletic capability. And Sid's dad had been to a chiropractor early on in his life. And so he encouraged Sid. He knew my brother, T.O., had opened up his practice up there in our neighborhood. And so he encouraged Sid to go, and he did, and he got an Atlas adjustment. And had such dramatic change, that's when Sid decided to be a chiropractor. And he and Nell came up actually on their honeymoon. I'd already been up there 6 months at the time. But we ended up, I took a couple of summers off. They stayed straight through. And so we ended up graduating in spring of 56.
Yeah, I think I've looked through your yearbook, and there were a lot of really famous and great chiropractors that came out of your era, and you all had the best faculty. I mean, my grandpa said all of the faculty at that time were handpicked by BJ, and they all somehow related their subject matter to chiropractic philosophy. And so you really had probably some of the best education in the history of chiropractic.
Well, I agree with that. And of course, your granddad, I'm sure many people listening in on this, our interview tonight, realize that your granddad, you know, he was a diabetic. And I mean, they were giving up on him. He was maybe a few months of his life left. It's the time from a medical perspective, and then chiropractic is what saved his life. And of course, back in the day, Beth, most all of the people that went there and enrolled at chiropractic college in those days had already been under chiropractic care, and so we were somewhat familiar with chiropractic. And did have, as you mentioned, a great faculty. And your granddad is right, and of course, we had every opportunity to go hear BJ when he would speak. But all the faculty, it was a great period of time. It really was. And we had, you mentioned people that were there when we were there, Reggie Gold and Tom Gilardi and Chuck Gibson. And I could just go on and on. Just a lot of other people that were have done well. Glenn Stillwagon and Vern Pierce. And they were in the 1052 class that I
Wow.
rolled in. Yeah.
Did you get to have Dr. Galen Price for your philosophy teacher?
Sure did.
Wow.
Sure did.
Tell us what he was like as a teacher.
Well, Galen was just, he had a presence about him, Beth, that you knew right away he was rock solid on chiropractic, and he didn't mind telling you about it. And he was excellent chiropractic philosophy teacher. He really was. And he would give examples of cases that he'd had through the years. You know, there was one thing I remember him doing, so that we were inspired by hearing these stories of cases that he had had and the results they had gotten. And, you know, I think it's so important to have that seed planted, so give the students encouragement. I think that's one of the problems in today's education. So many of the chiropractic education, the students, when they arrive, and been to a chiropractor before. They just decided for whatever reason they may decide to be a chiropractor, but hadn't experienced it. And I don't know how much case hearing about cases that they have in the program today, but so important that you be inspired. That's what we were. It was amazing. And to be honest with you, when I went up there, and my brothers encouraged me to go, and I was happy to do it as a young man, but when we started class, it was just fascinating to me to look at the human body and how it's made up, and about the innate intelligence running this body, and it was thrilling, and so it made school at that time so much easier.
Yeah.
For me, because we were, like I say, we were inspired.
Yeah, Dr. Price was actually the doctor that observed my grandpa give his very first adjustment in the BJ clinic as a student.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I know when my grandpa was in the student clinic, that it was in the auditorium, and there was just a stage up front, and so one at a time the students would adjust their patient in front of God and everybody, my grandpa would say. So was it still like that when you went to school?
Sure was. Way up on the stage.
Yes.
And
Yeah. Can you tell us about, like, kind of from the beginning to the end, like how you got your patient, like they were on a, sign on a blackboard, and like just talk the students through like what it was like to be a clinician in the BJ clinic?
well, it was a little small auditorium with a stage up front, and our instructors were up there on the stage. And back then, Beth, everything was by pattern, instrumentation pattern. You could do leg check, but to be honest with you, you either were in pattern or out. You either that was the main goal at that particular time. And so but you know, we would get patients just like they do today, just anywhere you can find someone that has a health issue, and you can get them to come in to the student clinic, which is what we did. And but you take your patient when they called you. You go up and you graft your patient, and then your instructor would say, "Well, what do you think about it?" and ask you, you know, and you'd say, "Well, it looks to me like they're in pattern," and say, "Okay." And then what are you gonna do? You know, it was just that regular routine. What are you gonna do next? And you just had to perform in front of them, and they graded you right there on the stage. It was like your granddaddy said, right, God, in front of God to everybody, because you're up there on the stage, and the rest of the students, until they were called up, that's where they're sitting out front.
Yeah. Did you take, at that time, did you take with your patient only upper cervical films, or did you take full spine x-rays?
Well, no, it was all upper cervical. We did have full spine x-rays. They did take full spine x-rays, but we only adjusted upper cervical. Now we did in the technique classes, we went through full spine aspects as well in technique, but as far as in the clinic concerned, it was all upper cervical at that time. Because BJ, he was HIO, you know, he was a HIO guy, and
Yeah.
so that was the major emphasis while we were there. And most of us, Sid and Elle and myself, I can just speak for us, you know, we came out basically knowing toggle recoil. That was our go-to technique at that time. But
Well, I think if you're only going to do one adjustment, that's the best one still. So,
well, we got to clear that atlas. Yeah.
so when you all graduated, then did you go back to Atlanta to set up your practice?
I came back, and my brother JK opened up an office for me in a little community in Smyrna, not far from where Life University is now. But I was there 3 months and was drafted. Draft was on the Korean War, and so I was drafted and spent 2 years in the service. And Sid and Mel, of course, they started their practice in Austell. But fortunately, I was able to be in the Atlanta area because I got stationed at Fort McPherson, which is right there in Atlanta, and spent a year and a half there. And Beth, my wife, and I married in '57, and we opened our practice in Madison, Georgia, in '58.
Oh, okay. That's a nice area. I didn't know that's where you practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us more about Beth. Did you know Beth before you went to chiropractic college, or did you meet her after?
Well, we there's a whole story to that question. I'll do the best to answer it. I don't know how entertaining it'll be to the audience, but I was used to. I became a Christian when I was 9 years of age, and grew up in the church. I was in the cradle roll all the way through, but 9 I accepted the Lord as my Savior. So, and I was attending here in Atlanta before I went to Davenport, a large church called Baptist Tabernacle, and it had like, it was a huge church, hold like 3,000 people. Anyway, when I got up to Davenport, we were. My mom went with me because I was her baby boy. She didn't want me to go by myself. But at any rate, Roy Sweat's sister-in-law had an apartment downtown. And so we stayed with her for a couple of weeks. And she told me there's a little church down the street when Sunday came. And I went down there, and it was about 20 or 30 people in there. So a couple. So I started looking for other churches. And then saw an ad in the paper, Times Democrat, that a church out on East Locust, just a couple of 3 blocks just past where your granddad's office was, Grandview Baptist. And so they were showing a Billy Graham film. So it was Saturday night, so I went and really liked the film. And then people were so friendly. I went back Sunday and sat up in the balcony, and I remember seeing in the choir this good-looking blonde. So I asked questions about her and found out they said, "Oh, she's the pastor's daughter." Oh my goodness,
Oh,
I don't know about that, but at any rate, I'd been dating a girl here in Atlanta at the time, so we didn't date until she was, she was just 14 then. So she was 16, I was 19. We started dating, and we married, as I mentioned, in '57.
wow.
And this August will be 65 for us.
Wow. I guess I didn't know Beth was from Iowa. We
Yeah, she's a well,
She's an
actually,
Iowa girl too. That's great.
but yeah, she was born in Youngstown, and her dad had a pastor of a church there, but came to Davenport in '48, I think, '47 or '48.
So when you moved back to Georgia, how many chiropractors were in the state of Georgia at that time? Because of course that was before Life College. So were there very many chiropractors in Atlanta or in Georgia at that time?
Well, thinking back on it now, it seems awful small, but at that time it was a goodly number, because I know one of the things that Palmer in those days, early '50s into the mid '50s, the various states had clubs, like the New York Club, New Jersey Club, Pennsylvania Club, and we had a Georgia Club, and our Georgia Club was one of the larger clubs there. We'd have like 70, 75 members in the Georgia Club.
Wow.
Uh, and there's only like 1,000 students at the school. So, but at any rate, probably I'm gonna say in the state when we came in, probably 150
Oh, that's
chiropractors
a lot.
in,
That's a lot.
in the state. Yeah, wasn't bad at all. And so, but I think when I was president of the Georgia Chiropractic Association in early '70s, we probably had maybe 250 at that time.
So you came back to the Atlanta area, and Dr. Siddendale came back, and you all were practicing. And so at what point did discussion talk start about maybe starting this dynamic essential movement and starting Life College? Like, kind of what was happening that kind of led you all down that path?
Well, Sid and Nell had a large volume practice out in Austell, um, and they'd have Tuesday night meet every Tuesday night. They'd invite chiropractors to come to the office, and they had one of their big rooms, seats in there, and it would hold probably 30, 40 people. And so we would go up from Madison, Beth and myself and a friend, Paul Barnwell, we'd drive up, and we'd go to the Tuesday night meetings. And so later on, after I'd been in Madison about 2.5 years, Sid kept encouraging me, wanting me to come up. He'd opened 7 offices in Atlanta in the black community. Back then, those days, there was segregation, and if you're a black patient, you had to go around the back and go in the back door. It's a terrible thing, but at any rate, he said, "I'm gonna open up offices in their community, where they feel welcome to come in," and so that's what happened. And so he opened up 7 offices there, and I came up in '61 and started running one of Sid's offices, and so that way we became, because we had known Sid and I grew up in the same neighborhood, so I actually knew him.
Oh, I didn't know you knew him that far back.
Oh yeah, all the way back. I can remember when I was probably 6 years old. We had a community pool and park close by, and I'd see him, and he was my sister's age, like 5.5 years older. But at any rate, I've been knowing him basically all my life.
Wow.
But then we came closer, of course, when I was running one of his practice clinics, and then of course Sid started talking about maybe starting a program of his own. Back in those days, it was all about mixer straight, and you know, to be honest with you, there were back then. If you had a practice, I mentioned went to Great Lake, like you were the Lake Clinic back when I was, and this was in 51. They had, they were seeing. I mean, you go to the reception room out there, would have probably 20 or 30 people in the reception room, but these people who were using modalities and all back then, they would they 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 would all had small practices. It was unusual situation. They had smaller practices. The ones that used modalities, and the volume people were the ones that had, I mean, straight upper circle people, not upper circle, but full spine upper circle. They the ones that had the big practices. So, but we, at any rate, Sid started talking about want to start have a start program because there was some confusion going, not confusion, there was a merger effort by the old NCA. They became ACA first, and then they decided they wanted to merge with ICA. And a lot of the ICA people, the top ICA people, were agreeing to that. And so even Jim Parker, I know, Sid was a Parker pal and spoke out there a lot. But when that thing came up, he wanted to take the middle of the road. He didn't want to take the side, but he leaned toward the merger side. And Sid kind of fell out with Jim at that time. And Sid said, "Dee, he said, I think we ought to start." And we went to, I'll be honest with you, this was the catalyst right here. We went to, you won't believe this, we went to a district meeting, the Atlanta district of the Georgia Chiropractic Association, and about 17 of the chiropractors, they had stethoscopes around their neck. And well, Sid, that's exactly what we said. And Sid said, "Dee, what the hell is going on?"
Wow.
So we asked around, and they said, "Well, we're going to this meeting. They're teaching us how to be real doctors." And Sid said, "Well, tell us more about this real doctor business." He said, "Well, you have to act like everybody knows if you're going to be a doctor, you got to have a stethoscope around your neck. You look at all the pictures." And he said, "Well, what else did they teach at this seminar?" And he said, "Well, your patient has to look up to you. So you have to have when you interview your patient the first time, you make sure you're up on a high rise so that they have to look up at you."
Wow.
And well, what else do they teach you this so good? He said, "Well, make sure that they pay before they see the doctor." And Sid said after that meeting, he said, "Dee, we got to do something about this. These people absolutely lost their mind. So they built that practice on love, serving, and giving, out of on abundance, out of all stuff." And so, at any rate, that was sort of the catalyst. He said, "We got to start doing something." So, in November '64, we had the first DE, and it grew from there through the years. Had thousands and thousands of chiropractors from all over the world. And in fact, most all the chiropractors, even the chiropractors that have had their own programs through the years, at one time were DE alumni. They had come to DE. DE, or Sid, Laurel's beeping in. Oh,
You're up.
Oh, Laurel. Yeah, I'm off. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So my grandpa told me that, of course, when BJ died, a lot of those that were closest to BJ got let go from the college, and my grandpa was one of those people that got let go. And a lot of them really went into a deep depression. And of course, my grandpa was one of those people that became very depressed. And so one year, Dr. Russ Earhart said, "Clay, why don't you come with me down to these meetings in Atlanta, these dynamic essential meetings with Sid Williams? You remember Sid Williams?" And so when my grandpa went with Dr. Earhart, he said that like the student became the teacher, like Dr. Sid gave him his spizz back, and then my grandpa really started getting back into teaching and traveling. And so for those Thompson technique people out there, I don't know if they realize just how much we as a Thompson family and the Thompson technique owes to you and to Sid and to the whole DE movement.
Yeah, well, I know your dad, your granddad came, Beth. I remember him. We were at the air host Hilton Inn at the airport in Atlanta, where we were having meetings at the time. So I can remember him being there. We're talking about in the late '60s. We're talking about 1960. DE started fall of '64. I know your granddad came down probably in 68, 60, somewhere in that neighborhood. And then we decided, one of the Sid formed Life Foundation to Service Education Research Organization for the chiropractic profession. And one of the goals for that was to build a clinic on wheels. So we raised money there at DE, build a mobile clinic, and we had it down there at the hotel one time. I remember vividly, your dad was providing one of the tables, the Thompson Terminal Point table. It was in the clinic. And so we had it parked outside the hotel, and a fellow named Melvin Belli, who's attorney, famous attorney from California, was brought there by Ted Frygard. And I remember we had pictures of your granddaddy, Melvin Belli, in that clinic, on wheels there. Yeah. So, yeah. And then later on, when we went to the Biltmore Hotel from out there at the airport, your granddad started having classes, and they would start on Wednesday. DE started on Thursday afternoon those days. And so your granddad would come down on Wednesday and start classes Wednesday afternoon late around 4 o'clock, and go to that evening, and then come back on Thursday morning with classes. I'll have to tell you this. One day he came up to me, he said, "Dee," he said, we can't keep bringing this table. He says, if I just get a table, we put it in your clinic, will you promise to get me that table up to Biltmore every evening?" I said, "Oh, sure, Clay, I'll do that." I didn't realize what I promised, but
how heavy they are.
Oh, heavy. I'd have to get 3 guys to come and load that thing up and haul it up there. You know, I did that for a good long while, have it up there for him, and invariably every time it would always be something. And I was using it all the time. So every time I'd take it up, your granddad knew everything about that table, so he would find inevitably he'd find something wrong with it. He'd fix it. He said, "Dee, how come you didn't get that fixed?" And so one time he said, "I'll tell you one thing, that Dee Elmer, Sid Williams, if they tried to scratch the rear end with a screwdriver, they ended up putting their eyes out." I'll never forget that. But at any rate, those days with your granddad there at DE, and I don't know how many tables that they sold for Zenith, but I mean, there were times when chiropractors come in and say, "I'll take 3, I'll take 2. One chiropractor said, "I'll take 6, just placing orders for that many tables." So it was a great thing for your granddad. It was a great thing for DE, and we loved having your granddad there. And we've had some great relationships and through the years. And I think I mentioned to you earlier, we had the 75th birthday party and the 80th birthday party for your granddad at DE. And he would go on continuing ed programs for us too. We went to Hawaii and different places with your and Peggy, your grandmother.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I know as a kid, you know, mom and I would sometimes tag along to some of those classes and spend time with my grandma while you guys were all in the meetings. I remember we went down to Miami for a meeting. That might have been an ICA meeting at the Fontainebleau Hotel. And then we went another time on the trip to Jamaica. And I don't know, I assume that was a DE meeting. I don't know what, but
that was the Life College continuing ed program.
Okay, yeah. But you know, on one of those birthday parties that we came to, that's when I decided to become a chiropractor. So I really owe a lot to DE also.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was, we had some great time. In fact, when we were on that Life College continuing ed cruise and all over in Hawaii, your granddad, because he had this big movie camera, he wanted me to carry that thing around, and I did. as best I could. But one day we decided he wanted to go up to see Kilauea and the volcano, and so Beth and myself and our two sons were with us, and your grandmother and your granddad, and we got the SUV, drove up to Mount Kilauea, and we got up there. It was 1986, and people came running out of this main house up there, and we said, "What's going on?" And they said, "Challenger just blew up." And so that's how I remember that. That's when Challenger exploded at that time, just as we got up to Mount Kilauea.
Well, I know when I started chiropractic college at that time, my grandpa turned the rights of the Thompson technique over to the college, and Dr. Sid had some technique manuals put up and put on some seminars, and so we, as a Thompson technique, have just such a rich history with you and Dr. Sid and DE and Life College. So I just appreciate you so much, and thank you for all that you did for my grandpa.
Well, my goodness, son, it was a privilege. Your granddad was, and I don't know, I think to, to be a person who is he was astute. Your granddad was one smart cookie, not only in development of the technique, but he really, I think he absorbed everything BJ put out. I know from a chiropractic perspective he did, but he was, it was just always inspiring to me to be around your granddad. It really was. And then we formed a real close bond together because I helped him so much in various aspects. And we would back, I hope the audience don't mind me telling it. Maybe I shouldn't. I better not tell that.
Tell it off the camera.
Yeah, off the camera.
We talked earlier before we got on the call about all of the times that when my grandpa would come to the DE meetings and play his violin, that your bride Beth would always accompany him on the piano. And I know she's played, I think, the organ, hasn't she? Or the piano in church all these years.
She's has been all her adult life in her teenage years when she started playing organ, but she played organ at all the churches we've been members through the years, and she's a very, very talented and accomplished organist. And but back then, of course, there's no organ in the hotels, so she would play the piano for a lot of different people that sang there. Art Copman, he used to sing there, and some other people earlier than Art that sang at DE. And of course, your granddad, I think I told you the story about him playing the fiddle. He called it his fiddle. Yeah. And I'm not sure whether that was a Stradivarius, but whatever it was he's playing was really one fine instrument. I know that. Yeah, we had some great times, and he did a lot entertaining at some of our DE banquets. Back then, we had DE banquets every Saturday at DE.
Yeah.
And,
well, I guess let's finish up. Just let everybody know, what are you two up to now? I know you moved to, I think, over by Savannah. Are you?
Yeah,
tell us what are you up to nowadays?
Well, we're halfway between Savannah and Jacksonville, Florida, off the Georgia coast. There's a 4-mile causeway, goes over from Brunswick, Georgia, over to St. Simons and Sea Island, Georgia. And we've been down here, actually came down in 2003, and then decided in 13 we're going to go, and 14 we're going to go back to Atlanta area, which we did for 3 years. Beth missed down here so much, we came back. So we've been down here since 2017. We love it down here, and she's able to play at the church here still, some on a limited basis now, but she still plays. And so we love it here. But a lot of people ask me, Beth, and I'll be 89 in November. Wow. People ask me, what do you do in your spare time? I mean, you golf, you fish, what do you do down there? Well, be honest with you, and I know this is a cliche, but people stay busy every day. I have busier when you're retired than when you're working. It's like, how'd you have time? But I stay active with involved with DE primarily still, and stay a member of the ICA, of course, and then Georgia Council of Chiropractic, and so so we, I keep my nose in the profession, even though I'm no longer practicing.
Yeah.
And our profession has done so much for us and our family. We got in the Humber group now, there's like 11 chiropractors in the Humber group, counting nephews and so forth, as well as sons. And I have a grandson who's a chiropractor, and his wife's a chiropractor. And so that's one of the nice things about chiropractic. It's spread. Once it gets in the family, it gets spreads. And that's really good. Yeah, so it's been a blessing to us. Personally, just from my own personal standpoint, I tell a lot of people, and Beth says the same thing. We know we wouldn't be as healthy as we are at the age we are if it weren't for chiropractic. And we go with our chiropractor every Tuesday. We got a standing appointment every Tuesday to get checked, make sure we're holding. So anyway.
There are probably some people watching that will watch this that don't know about DE. So for those people that want to learn more about DE, I know you've got there's some great people running that. Where can people go to find out more about DE?
Well, you just go to www.lifedynamicessential.com, and it'll flash up there, and then you can get to the home page, and you check on there and see the dates of future meetings. We're still having 4 meetings a year. There's nothing like it. At one time, DE was having, it wasn't anything, on a routine basis. Back in the late 80s and early through the 90s, we were having like 1,500, 2,000 people at the meetings. But now we'll have 300 people or so at the meeting, still 4 times a year. And we have one of them in Florida, usually, and 3 of them in Atlanta. So, and DE, people say, what is DE about? DE is about, not only about chiropractic, but it's about personal development. What to do to strengthen your inner core, open up yourself to let the wee small voice within start listening. Don't do so much talking, but listen, and let your innate direct your activities, and in a sense inspire you. And then of course we have speakers. We have continuing ed now. You get like 5 or 10 hours of continuing ed at our meetings now too. So, but it's a great program, inspiring program. A lot of well, like I say, I bet you through the years, I can't tell you all the chiropractors. I remember Ron Oberstein was just interviewing Chuck Gibson and Gibson Management for years out in California. And he asked me, he said, Chuck, did you ever go to DE? Chuck said, oh yeah, I went to DE. Everybody went to DE. Mm-hmm. And so and that's the truth. It's been my being a part of it. A lot of people I think give me a lot more credit than I'm really due. To me, during those years, it was just the daily routine. I never thought that much about it at the time. I never thought that much about what kind of impact it was having on the profession. But it's definitely had a strong impact throughout the profession in certain areas of the profession, not the entire profession, but a large part of the profession, particularly on principal chiropractic side, subluxation based chiropractic.
Well, you've been a household name since I can remember, and I've known of you and Beth since I was a little girl, and everything I've ever known about you is that you have devoted your life 100% to chiropractic. So thank you so much for everything that you have given the profession.
Well, thank you, Beth, and I appreciate having the opportunity to share.
Yes.
And we're proud of you and what you're doing. And I told a lot of people are so proud of you, and you keeping the flame alive for your Papa Granddad's
Mhm.
Thompson technique, and
Yeah.
through the years, I've got pictures. I was trying to figure out a way I could show some of these pictures of your granddad and us, and Dave Mitchell from New Mexico, and all that
Yes.
back in the days. And he's a great Thompson practitioner out there in New Mexico for years. And he used to teach classes too back in the,
Yeah.
when he was able. He's still alive and kicking, but
He is. Yeah.
not high.
We're gonna talk to him too, and get interview him, and because
Good.
he also was at Palmer with BJ in those days, and so we want to talk to everybody that is around that still remembers all of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, we used to sell cooking utensils together. Dave Mitchell and Sid and Nell and myself.
Oh my goodness. Well,
Yeah.
every time I get to talk to you, it's like having a little piece of my grandpa back. So I always love getting to talk with you, and please give my love to Beth. And thank you so much for spending this time with the Thompson technique people today.
Wonderful. You keep
Thank,
up the good work, hon. We love you.
love
Take
you
care.
too.
Uh-huh.
Goodbye.
Bye bye. Good night.